Buddhism began as a small movement in the plains of northern India more than 2,500 years ago, yet its impact transformed the entire Indian subcontinent into one of the strongest and most influential civilizations of the ancient world. The strength of a nation is not always measured in armies or weaponry but also in cultural influence, social organization, intellectual creativity, and moral authority. In all of these areas, Buddhism played a decisive role in shaping India into a force that influenced regions far beyond its borders, extending to Central Asia, East Asia, and Southeast Asia, when Siddhartha Gautama, later known as the Buddha, attained enlightenment in the 5th century BCE. His teachings offered a profound philosophical framework for human life. He emphasized nonviolence, compassion, mindfulness, and ethical responsibility. In a land filled with rigid hierarchies and constant political rivalries, this philosophy was revolutionary. Instead of focusing solely on ritual or hereditary privilege, Buddhism stressed merit, discipline, and the ability of each individual to rise above suffering. Such ideas created fertile ground for building a more cohesive and just society, which in turn became the foundation for India's enduring strength. One of the most visible ways Buddhism made India strong was by uniting diverse communities under a common ethical and cultural framework. Before Buddhism, India was fragmented into many small kingdoms often engaged in wars. The Buddhist message of peaceful coexistence and respect for all forms of life inspired rulers to see governance not as domination but as a responsibility for the welfare of their people. This was most famously realized under the Maurya Empire, particularly the reign of Emperor Ashoka in the 3rd century BCE. After the devastating Kalinga War, Ashoka converted to Buddhism and reshaped his empire's policies around the principles of Dhamma, or moral law. He renounced unnecessary conquest, promoted religious tolerance, established hospitals and rest houses, and sent emissaries across Asia to spread Buddhism. Under his rule, India not only became militarily secure but also morally admired, setting an example for governance that blended strength with compassion. Buddhism also strengthened India intellectually. The Buddhist monastic universities such as Nalanda, Vikramashala, and Takshashila became some of the greatest centers of learning in the world. Scholars, monks, and students from distant lands such as China, Korea, Japan, Tibet, and even Greece traveled to study philosophy, logic, medicine, astronomy, and mathematics in these institutions. These centers were not closed religious seminaries but vibrant universities where debates and intellectual inquiry flourished. The commitment to rational thought, meditation, and disciplined learning made India the intellectual powerhouse of the ancient world. The innovations in logic and epistemology developed by Buddhist philosophers such as Nagarjuna, Dharmakirti, and Dignaga laid the foundation for global philosophical discourse. This intellectual strength was a form of soft power that expanded India's influence far beyond its borders. Economically, Buddhism created networks of strength through trade. The spread of Buddhism along the Silk Road connected India with Central Asia, China, and eventually Korea and Japan. Buddhist monks often traveled with merchants, and monasteries provided safe havens for travelers and traders. This system encouraged cultural and commercial exchange on an unprecedented scale. Indian art, language, architecture, and religious practices were exported along with goods like textiles and spices. The Buddhist emphasis on ethical trade and honest livelihood also helped stabilize economic life within India itself, fostering trust and reducing corruption in business interactions. Thus, the economic web built around Buddhist principles enhanced India's wealth and prestige. Another key factor was the cultural flourishing that Buddhism stimulated. Indian art and architecture achieved some of its greatest expressions through Buddhist patronage. The grand stupas at Sanchi and Amaravati, the rock-cut caves at Ajanta and Ellora, and the serene statues of the Buddha became iconic symbols of Indian creativity. These monuments were not only religious symbols but also markers of India's organizational capacity, artistic mastery, and ability to mobilize resources for massive projects. The visual language of Buddhist art spread far beyond India, inspiring Chinese, Japanese, Thai, and Cambodian art for centuries. Through culture, India projected strength without the need for conquest. Socially, Buddhism challenged rigid divisions of caste and offered a more egalitarian model. While not entirely abolishing social differences, the Buddha's message that enlightenment was open to all regardless of birth, gender, or class gave Indian society a powerful tool for inclusivity. This inclusivity fostered a sense of shared destiny, which made India more resilient. The participation of women as nuns, the encouragement of lay participation, and the ideal of a compassionate ruler all contributed to a more balanced and humane society. Strong societies are those that empower the majority of their people rather than just a privileged few, and Buddhism played a major role in creating such empowerment in ancient India. The strength of India under Buddhism was also spiritual in nature. The practice of meditation and mindfulness cultivated a disciplined and resilient population. Spiritual strength often translated into social harmony, reducing internal conflict and encouraging cooperation. The idea of conquering one's own desires and ego rather than other nations created an inward strength that was admired across Asia. Even today, mindfulness and meditation, practices rooted in Buddhist tradition, are recognized worldwide as tools for mental resilience and psychological well-being. In ancient India, this spiritual discipline was part of daily life, contributing to both individual and collective strength. One cannot overlook the diplomatic strength that Buddhism brought to India. By sending Buddhist missions to Sri Lanka, Burma, Central Asia, and China, India forged peaceful relationships that extended its influence without military campaigns. These diplomatic efforts helped create a cultural sphere of influence sometimes called the Buddhist Commonwealth, where India was at the center. The spread of Buddhist scriptures, relics, and teachings turned India into the spiritual homeland for millions of people across Asia. This soft power was far more durable than temporary military victories and kept India relevant for centuries, even after Buddhism began to decline in India itself around the 12th century. Its legacy continued to sustain the strength of Indian civilization. The values of nonviolence, tolerance, and intellectual inquiry influenced later Hindu traditions, as well as the philosophies of leaders like Mahatma Gandhi. India's image as a spiritual and philosophical leader owes much to the Buddhist era. The fact that so many Asian nations still look to India as the birthplace of Buddhism shows the lasting strength the country gained through this tradition. Therefore, the strength Buddhism gave India was multidimensional. Militarily, it helped transform empires into just and stable powers. Intellectually, it created universities and philosophies that shaped global thought. Economically, it established trade networks that enriched the subcontinent. Culturally, it inspired art and architecture of unparalleled beauty. Socially, it broke down rigid barriers and encouraged inclusivity. Spiritually, it gave people resilience and inner power. Diplomatically, it expanded India's influence peacefully across Asia. All of these together made India not only the strongest country of its time but also a civilizational force whose echoes are still felt today. The story of how Buddhism made India the strongest country is not simply about religion but about how ideas can transform nations. When a society embraces compassion, wisdom, and discipline, it creates a foundation that is far stronger than any fortress or army. India's strength during its Buddhist age reminds us that true power comes not only from domination but from enlightenment, not from fear but from wisdom, not from conquest but from compassion. This is the enduring lesson that continues to make India a source of inspiration for the world. Thanks for watching. Our channel is new and needs your support. In our channel you can find many videos on the history and philosophical teachings of Buddhism. Please subscribe to our channel to support the teachings of Buddha on YouTube. You can download our app from Google Play. Get notifications, daily quotes from Buddha, guided meditation methods, articles about Buddhist wisdom and sutras from Pali Canon. Discover inner peace, cultivate mindfulness, and unlock the infinite wisdom of the Buddha with this app. Download link below.